Horses suffer because humans think they know. The horse presents an existential threat to the dominant culture, the whole shebang. Because of the archetypal energies of the horse, all human beings can experience both the existential threat the horse presents to the ego and the incredible potential the horse offers to the soul. We might not want to believe in these things, in mysteries and magic and the horse as a mirror and vehicle for the soul. But people do long to experience magic, and millions of people in particular long to experience the magic of horses, or think they have already experienced it. And yet when it comes to confronting the shadows and other obstacles of ignorance that keep us from the fullest possible experience of life and its wonders, we often balk, tense up, rationalize, get defensive. And we often do this precisely under the guise of being rational or standing up for ourselves or our experience, what kind of person we are, or any number of other maneuvers of the ego. It's really challenging because, of course, the dominant culture oppresses all sorts of people, then they don't feel seen, and we get this whole language of I'm not being seen. But the thing that wants to be seen is just some dimension of the ego in many cases. It's not like our essence. You're not seeing my essence. Well, what is that? Most of us don't know what that is. It's not an object. It's not a story that we could tell about some experience we had. And so we may insist that we are not being defensive or rationalizing, and that's exactly how the best rationalizations work. We just call them reasons, or we call them knowledge. We may call them self-knowledge, knowledge about horses, knowledge about politics and the world. And I see this basic situation all the time. It's not like, I got some new client yesterday and suddenly saw this unique phenomenon of how people get defensive around dangerous wisdom. We're talking about this because it has to do with all of us, whether we like horses or not, and horses can provoke it. And what I see with clients, same thing that other philosophers saw with their students or psychologists see, is that it's challenging to fully enter the unknown. We always seem to want to insist on what we know. But Sophia insists on our not knowing. And you can think of that as a hyphenated word. We're not trying to get intellectual here. We're trying to just be precise, trying to get at experience. And experience is always more precise than our words, so that's sometimes why we fiddle around with the words. Sophia, wisdom, she's just an image. It's not a concept. It's a sense of wisdom. She insists that we quit behaving as if we have no unconscious, as if we know exactly what our problems are and how to solve them. Our politicians behave like this too. Everybody does. Our tech gurus, they're going to save the world because they apparently understand it. They know what the problems are and how to solve them. If we really understood ourselves so well, we wouldn't have the problems we have. And horses wouldn't have the problems they have. Horses suffer because humans think they know. Because we could have years of experience. And the horse world is probably like every other world. I've been in different kinds of worlds. I've seen the tango world and the horse world. And there's always this sense of the person, each person knows. And they have the experience and they can show you why. And, I've been a dancer for 25 years and I've done all these shows and this is how you do tango. And then, you get just this one version of it. And it might work in certain ways. It might miss a lot. A lot of times, say, in the tango world, all the right answers miss all the spiritual depth. And in the horse world, it's just very charged. Everybody's sure they know what they're doing. And because many of these people care about horses, then there is the sentient being at stake. And they do think they're trying to do something right by the horse. And they might have very good intentions. Once we get to the areas that might be profound in relation to anything, the horse, dancing, painting, life, then claiming knowledge there means claiming self-knowledge. It means claiming wisdom, love, and beauty. That's such an important point. Once we get someplace interesting, we have broken down the duality between the observer and the observed, and if I start to claim, I know about this, I'm essentially saying, well, I must be enlightened. If we have any possibility of growth in the realm of wisdom, love, and beauty, any chance, we might become more wise, loving, and beautiful, then something about horses remains both unknown and potentially threatening to our ego, maybe even humiliating to our ego. Isn't that funny? And it applies to everything, and that's why also it's so interesting in my work with people who are high-level performers. And it sometimes marks a difference between a very high-level performer and someone who's sort of more mediocre. Because as someone who's more mediocre at something, say like a kind of average dancer, they might get very defensive when I try to help them with their dancing because they want to insist on what they know. A very, very high-level person can often be the person who is so committed that they're always willing to say, well, show me what I don't know. They're willing to be humiliated. Well, I've been doing it that way all this time. And this other way is so much better. The non-doing is so much better than the doing. So we always have to be willing to take this risk. We can take a deep breath in and maybe observe any reactivity that might come, even though I think we're going to try to take a broad view here. I think it's the best way. To really get a sense of the magic, we might have to really zoom out and see if we could sense the possibility of magic. Maybe we won't be able to touch it directly, but could we say, wait, we've arrived at a question that could put us at the edge of the wild, the edge of the magic. Once we admit that we have some space for wisdom, a little bit more wisdom, a little bit more love, a little bit more beauty, grace, then we can admit that however pleasant, however ecstatic our experiences with horses or anything else, we might yet find ourselves cut off from a deeper magic and mystery that letting go could let us experience. It takes more than a powerful experience. It takes learning, rooted in wisdom, love, and beauty. That means a philosophical context. And learning means a movement into the unknown and from the unknown. That's the movement. It's into and from the unknown. We have to be in the unknown, a mind of not knowing. And with the horse, we not only have to admit that we might not know anything, or not anything really important, or at least something is left out, but more than that, the horse is still going to present this existential threat, including the threat to what we unconsciously fear we might have to give up or renounce in order to fully experience the magic and mystery of the horse and the world. Now, to add to the challenge, we contemplate all of this in the midst of the dominant culture, and the horse presents an existential threat to the dominant culture, the whole shebang. We can't think that we could live in this culture and have no infection from conquest consciousness, that nothing in us reacts on behalf of the culture. And that's because every single one of us gets some kind of benefit from it, even if it's a questionable benefit, an ambivalent benefit, an ambiguous benefit, however we want to describe it. To enter the unknown means forgetting everything we think we know and having the courage and vulnerability to stand naked in the presence of the horse. Naked in the wilderness of dangerous wisdom. The horse's dangerous wisdom embodied, symbolically, archetypally, and in their very sacred presence, the horse defies conquest consciousness so profoundly that even people who love horses deep down somewhere get a little nervous because we're all complicit in their continued oppression. And we all have a responsibility for the karmic wounds of the past, the memory of what human beings have done to the horse, done through the horse, done with the horse, how we have used the horse to oppress, how we have used the horse for violence and aggression, how we put violence and aggression onto the horse, into their bodies and minds, into their world. And again, this includes people who proclaim love for horses currently today. Human beings, we get driven by agendas. And one of those agendas is we're going to cultivate the land. We're going to develop the land. And we're developing and innovating all the time, those words, development and innovation, growth. And we apply it to ourselves too. We're going to grow. Like James Hillman once said, well, how big are you going to get? Are you going to be 25 feet tall? Are you growing tomatoes in there? What is this growth metaphor? What does it really mean? Maybe we need to be letting go. Maybe that's what we need to mature at this point. Letting go of agendas. And our agenda is not to cultivate the world. It takes on a far more narrow meaning. And so cultivating ends up being, a cultivated person is a person who's not wild, who's not connected to nature. It's often what it means. A cultured person, someone in New York somewhere who has tickets to the ballet. And I'm not saying the ballet is bad, it's just that we've created a duality. And sometimes it might even be better than to say the horse's job is to practice the whole of life onward. The horse doesn't cultivate in a narrow sense, but there's a practice of the wild, a practice of the sacred that Gary Snyder correctly names, an etiquette of the wild, an etiquette of freedom, an etiquette of sacredness. Horses know that etiquette. Horses know the etiquette of freedom. People rooted in wisdom, love, and beauty, people who live as indigenous, who live in accord with the etiquette of freedom, with the etiquette of sacredness, the etiquette of the wild, they practice the wild. They live as a practice of the wild, a practice of the sacred. That's magic. Magic is the practice of the wild. Magic is the practice of the sacred. It's how we conjure the world. Now, the very early horse is sometimes called the Eohippus, which means dawn horse. The Eohippus emerged over 50 million years ago. It took over 40 million years from that emergence of the dawn horse for the modern horse to appear, what we call the equus. So these beings made Turtle Island over 50 million years. They survived great shifts in climate, also shifts in vegetation, as what's referred to as C4 grass evolved from C3 grass. Horses and grasses go together, as do horses and plains, horses and the whole of Turtle Island, horses and the whole of the world. So in our world, conquest consciousness has spread everywhere. And because of that, that means we face the possibility of the collapse of the conditions of life, period. The human species faces real risk, as do countless other species. We've already made species extinct by means of our ignorance, and others are going every day. And so while wisdom has appeared in the dominant culture, the ignorance has become overwhelming, certainly at least in its consequences. And we don't have to think of the dominant culture as monolithic. We might see it as a loose collection, a family of cultures with a certain style of consciousness, a style of thinking, an industrialization, a mechanization, and an approach to the earth and to life that has conquest, extraction, domination, degradation, all sorts of personal agendas as its modus operandi. The horse came from a place of sacredness and wildness, a place that says, who do you think you are? That you think you can possess this place and these sentient beings. Who do you think you are to think you can put up a fence here and call this mine, and these beings are mine, my property? Wolfe said the same thing, and conquest settlers began to hate the horse the way they hated wolves. Horses got bounties put on them the way wolves did. People went around shooting horses, just killing them. Eventually the bounties went away and horses got value extracted in ever more brutal ways. And mainly, as we mentioned before, they all got almost totally exterminated by being turned into dog food. The magic of the horse, in order to receive that magic, it demands healing all of that and radically changing our relationship to the horse and beginning to really listen to the horse so that the horse can help us re-indigenize. Re-indigenizing means renouncing what doesn't work and learning from people who know how to live somewhere. People who know how to live, a culture that knows how to live in a manner rooted in wisdom, love, and beauty, in a manner attuned with ecological and spiritual realities. The horse knows how to live here. Horse culture is nature. Why not listen? Rather than listen to the human beings who want to manage the land, control the land, cultivate the land, make it good land, keep eliminating wild land, keep trying to add cubits to the measure of the value of their life and the world. That's the history of conquest. In fact, that's what the story of Erysichthon illustrates. Erysichthon couldn't stand that there was this sacred grove and that there was a divine tree in the sacred grove, and the workers wouldn't cut it all down so that he could extract the wood and make money. Wanted to put his labor into the thing to make it better, right? And this sacred tree was massive, so it was just this big pile of money to him. He wants it all cut down, and so he goes in and cuts down the divine tree himself. And similarly, Gilgamesh destroys the sacred forest. It's one of our oldest mythological figures, Gilgamesh, oldest one that we have record of. So in dominant culture, in conquest consciousness, we get stories instructing us that this is what happens. The wild and the sacred get destroyed. The land is good when we invade it, cut into it, extract. And then the women who go to the wild and the sacred, they eventually had to be hunted down too. Hence the witch hunts, because the women were probably the main keepers of ecological wisdom and attunement with wildness. We have some clear historical support for that notion, that many women were healers, keepers of the knowledge of the wild, in touch with nature. So this whole oppression of nature, horse, woman, and earth, all goes together. Makes it interesting how large a feminine presence there is in the horse world today. And our sensitivity to the magic and mystery of women, of the feminine, we could say, goes all together with our sensitivity, and by that we can really mean reactivity, to the magic and mystery of the horse and the earth. The reactivity around magic is the reactivity around the feminine and the equine, and the terrestrial. It's become that way. It's not like it's necessary. It's just the associations became natural given the development of conquest consciousness in tandem with the use of the horse, and the way patriarchy probably goes together also with the horse. You know, this is an anthropological kind of analysis. They have this strange going together of patriarchy, domination over the horse, violence toward the horse and with the horse, domination of nature and women and people close to nature, anybody too wild, the attempt to push magic out of our minds, to push magic into the shadow, into the disreputable. It's all rather curious. The witch hunts, too, they reveal some of this all going together, Men were the hunters, the inquirers, the inquisitors. It's all strange stuff. And again, we're trying to get at the way in which really listening to the horse defies all of this. And it has to do with learning from a being who knows, a being who made this place, who knows how to live in this place. And that's an incredible idea.